It was drizzling the day we signed the divorce papers. Lin Wanqing sat across from me and slid the signed agreement over without even glancing up. Her hands were well-maintained. Her nails freshly done, a soft nude pink with a hint of shimmer that caught the warm amber light of the cafe. She was wearing the camel coat I'd gone with her to buy. A pearl brooch she'd picked up just last week pinned to the collar. There. She capped the pen. Her voice as casual as if she were handling some trivial paperwork. That I've had your things packed. Just go pick them up whenever. The house is my premarital property. You know that. I nodded. She stood, slinging her bag over her shoulder, and pulled a bank card from it, sliding it across the table toward me. Her finger tapped the plastic surface once. But there's 300,000 in here for you. I barely touched your salary all these years. It should be enough to get you back on your feet. She paused, as if weighing her next words. Mingyuan and I are having our wedding next month. I won't be inviting you. Lu Huayan. Let's end this cleanly. She stood there for a few seconds after speaking, probably waiting for some kind of reaction. Tears, accusations, begging. She must have had comebacks ready for every scenario. But I just reached out, pocketed the card, and stood up. Okay, I'll be going now. A flicker of surprise crossed her face, but it was quickly replaced by something like relief. She even smiled. Next time, don't go for someone out of your league. You should stick to your own level. I didn't respond. I turned and walked out of the cafe. The rain was light, a fine mist settling on my face. I stood on the steps outside, took a deep breath, and let the damp air fill my lungs, pushing aside the weight that had been sitting in my chest all afternoon. Through the glass door, I saw Lin Wanqing on the phone, her head tilted, lips curved into a smile. Probably Zhou Mingyuan. I stepped into the rain. I didn't check the balance on that card right away. Not because I didn't need the money. I desperately did. I had a security deposit to pay on a rental. Next month's living expenses were up in the air. And Lin Wanqing hadn't even let me take the half carton of eggs from the fridge when she kicked me out. But there was something stuck in my throat, a stubborn knot of pride. That card felt like a hot coal in my pocket. I thought about that 300,000. 6 years of marriage. 2,000 a month in allowance. The way her eyes would scan me for 3 seconds every time I bought a new shirt. The impatience in her voice whenever she said, "That little project of yours at work keeping you late again." 6 years, divided by 300,000. That came out to just over 4,000 a month. She'd priced my youth, itemized it like a receipt. That night, I checked into a short-term rental, in old building in the city's rundown district. 1,800 a month, first and last plus deposit. After paying, I had less than 2,000 left. I walked to the ATM downstairs and slid the card in. Her birthday was the pin. The screen flickered and the balance appeared. I blinked, thinking I'd read it wrong. Balance, $3.000.00. I looked again, 3,000. Not 300,000. 3,000. I stood in the glass booth of the ATM, the rain still coming down outside. The machine's cold blue light washed over my face. I stared at that number for maybe a full minute. Then slowly, I pulled the card out. My fingers gripped the plastic. My nails dug into my palm. It stung. She'd said 300,000. She'd sent 3,000. 6 years of salary, bonuses, project commissions. All of it on that card. She probably figured 300,000. Sounded generous. And once we were divorced, I'd never check the balance in front of her anyway. She was right about that. I wouldn't, because even now, I was still clinging to that thin veneer of dignity, pretending we were ending on good terms. Even if that veneer had already crumbled to dust. I pocketed the card and stepped out of the ATM booth. The rain hadn't let up. The street was slick, streetlights shattering into fragments in the puddles. I stood at the curb, hands in my pockets, thumb tracing the edge of the card. The cold plastic bit into my skin. It hurt, but I didn't let go. I met Lin Wanqing when I was 21. She was 20. She performed a solo dance at the university welcome party. The spotlight traced her movements, and the entire auditorium went silent that you could practically hear everyone holding their breath. I sat in the back row that night, watching her skirt spin and her hair lift, and one thought filled my mind: that she was too beautiful to even approach. That we actually got together after I finished grad school. She was working in marketing at a firm. I was in the building next door doing tech. We'd run into each other commuting, grab dinner sometimes, get to know each other. The night she reached for my hand first, I froze up completely. I was terrified of squeezing too hard and hurting her. She used to say I was honest, dependable, that she felt safe with me. I took that as the highest praise. Only later did I realize what those words really meant: that easy to control, Her family put down the down payment on our apartment. I covered the mortgage and household expenses. She said, "How about I take care of your salary card?" And I thought that was reasonable. She gave me $2,000 a month for personal spending. And I thought that was fine. A guy doesn't need much that I can't even remember how many late nights I worked over those 6 years. I pulled a straight 3 weeks on a major project, getting home at 2 a.m. every night. When the client signed off, I rushed home excited to tell her the bonus would be decent. She was scrolling through her phone on the couch. She said. Didn't look up that I never appeared in her social media. Group photos that she'd post only herself. When people asked, "Where's your husband?" she'd reply, "Working late. Couldn't make it." It took me a while to realize it wasn't that she didn't want me in her photos. She didn't want anyone knowing she'd married me. When did Zhou Mingyuan come into the picture? I don't know. All I know is that last fall, she started traveling more often for work. Her feed filled up with high-end restaurants and hotel photos. Caption: client site visit. Zhou Mingyuan was her college classmate. Rich kid, family owned a manufacturing business. Good looking. He pursued her before we got married. But back then he was too much of a player. She passed. Now he'd had his fun and came circling back. And she decided it was time for an upgrade. Did I know any of this before the divorce? I knew some of it. At least. The unfamiliar perfume on her clothes. The way she always set her phone face down. The increasingly frequent. Don't worry about it. I saw it all. But I chose not to see. Because I was terrified that the moment I called it out, I'd have nothing left. Then the bubble burst. Lin Wanqing placed the divorce papers on the coffee table and said that we're not right for each other anymore. I asked why. She looked at me for 3 seconds. I'd seen that look before on sales clerks sizing up a customer who couldn't afford what they were holding. On HR reps scrolling through resumes. It was the look you give someone who doesn't measure up. She said, Lu Huayan, you're a good man. But good men don't live good lives. I lay on the rock-hard mattress of that short-term rental. The bank notifications still glowing on my phone screen. $3,000. The ceiling had a crack running from the corner all the way to the light fixture. I stared at that crack, thinking about tomorrow, next month's rent, food, work. Lin Wanqing hadn't just kicked me out. She'd sent word to my company. I didn't know exactly what she said, but HR sent me an email Tuesday, due to project restructuring. Your position will be adjusted. Euphemism for demotion or constructive termination. 6 years as a key technical lead. Dismissed in a single email. Zhou Mingyuan worked fast. Not only was he taking my ex-wife, he was making sure my livelihood went too. That way Lin Wanqing had no lingering ties. She could settle into her new life as a rich man's wife without a second thought. I rolled over. My elbow hit something hard under the pillow. I reached in and pulled out a manila envelope. The edges were worn. It had arrived about a month ago. I'd glanced at the sender, Mingda law firm. Assumed it was junk mail, and shoved it into my suitcase. I'd brought it with me during the move and forgotten to open it. I sat up and tore the seal. Inside was a stack of documents and a business card-sized insert. The header read, Notice regarding estate inheritance of Mr. Chen Chiliang. Dense legal text filled the pages below. I flipped to the last one. Beneficiary, Lu Huayan. You have been identified as the sole legal heir of the late Mr. Chen Chiliang. A trust fund and associated assets were established in 2005 and are now ready for transfer. For details, please contact the designated liaison at Mingda Law Firm. Mr. Chen Chiming, Chen Chiliang. The name meant nothing to me. I'd never heard of him. My father's name was Lu Jiangwo. A steel mill worker his whole life. My mother left when I was 3. He raised me alone. He passed last year. Lung cancer. His last words to me were, Huayan, I never amounted to much. I'm sorry you got stuck with a father like me. He never once mentioned anyone named Chen Chiliang. I unfolded another piece of paper in the envelope. A copy of a handwritten letter. Dated 2005. The handwriting was steady and firm. Huayan, my son, if you're reading this, I'm probably gone. My name is Chen Chiliang. I am your biological father. My hand started shaking. The letter was short. It told the story of him and my mother. They'd been together in their youth. They parted ways. She didn't know she was pregnant when they split. After I was born, she tracked him down to let him know. He'd wanted to bring us back, but she'd already started a new family with Lu Jiangwo. She told him, the boy already has a father's name. Don't disturb his life. Chen Chiliang didn't disturb it, but he set up a trust in secret. He left half of everything he owned to the son he'd never met but never forgotten. The last line read, Huayan, you don't have to claim me. Just know that there's always been someone in this world who wanted you to have a good life. Even if he never told you. I stared at those words for a long time. Outside, the rain had stopped. Night air seeped through the crack in the window. Cool against my skin. The bottom of the envelope was a business card. Dark gray stock. 2 lines of text. Chen Qiming, founder chairman. Huiding Capital. Huiding Capital. I'd seen that name in financial news before. I'd never connected it to anything in my life. I pulled out my phone. I hesitated for about 5 seconds. Then I dialed the number on the card. It rang 3 times. Then picked up. A man's voice, warm with a slight southern accent. Hello. Lu Huayan. It's me. There was a pause on the other end. Then the voice softened, as if a guard had been lowered. You finally called. Your father waited 33 years. I've been waiting for you too. Tomorrow morning. Come to Huiding Tower. I'll have someone waiting in the lobby. You'll understand when you get here. The line went dead. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, staring at nothing. The night outside was ink black. The distant freeway lights traced a slow river of traffic across the city. I looked down at the letter again. Chen Shiliang's name glowed under the lamp. I turned off the light and lay back down. That crack in the ceiling was still there, but somehow, it looked shorter than before. I woke to a brilliant sunrise. Sunlight sliced through the curtain gap, painting a golden line across the floor. I stood in that light, pulled the only decent clothes I had left from my suitcase. A white button-down and black trousers. Ironed them, and left. Huiding Tower was in the best part of downtown. 58 floors. The glass facade gleaming blue in the morning sun. When I walked into the lobby, a man in a dark gray suit was already waiting by the elevators. He spotted me and stepped forward. Mr. Lu, Mr. Chen asked me to bring you up. The elevator rose straight to the top floor. When the doors opened, the view hit me. A wall of floor-to-ceiling glass. The entire city skyline spread out before me like a painting. Chen Qiming sat behind his desk. When he saw me walk in, he stood. He looked to be in his early 60s. Posture straight, hair silver gray but thick. He crossed the room and stopped 2 paces away. His eyes swept over me once. Then he reached out and placed a hand on my shoulder. You look just like him. I didn't know who him was, but I noticed that his eyes were red. Sit down, he said, gesturing to the seating area. I'll explain everything. I spent nearly 4 hours in that office that afternoon. Chen Qiming laid everything out. The DNA test results, the notarized will, the trust fund statements. My biological father, Chen Shiliang, was co-founder of Huiding Capital. He died 20 years ago in a plane crash. He was 39, never married, no other children. I was his only one. The trust had been established in 2005. The initial amount. When he said the number, I felt my brain short-circuit. 20 years of compounding interest, growing several times over. When Chen Qiming said the total out loud, the teacup in my hand wobbled, and water nearly spilled over the rim. You can access this money anytime. He slid an authorization form across the table. But there's something else. Before your father passed, he said something to me. He said, brother, if that kid ever comes to you, don't just give him money. Ask him what he wants to do. If he wants to do it, let him. If he doesn't, don't force him. I sat on that expensive leather sofa and stared at the photo on the wall across from me. An old, yellowed print of 2 young men standing in front of a newly topped-off building, grinning ear to ear. The one on the left looked a lot like Chen Qiming. The one on the right. His features were a mirror of the face I saw in the mirror every day. I want to do tech, I said. Chen Qiming looked at me. I've been working in intelligent control systems for years. I said, I have a full vision for it. I never had the chance to build it at my old company. If you're willing. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a file, placing it in front of me. Microintelligence, he said. Founder's a recent PhD grad. Brilliant technical mind. But no money. He paused. Your father always had a soft spot for technical people. You should take a look. I opened the cover. The core technical direction of the company was practically identical to the architecture I'd been building in my head for 6 years. The same framework I'd been coding late into the night. Tucked inside was a competitive analysis. The company's primary investor, listed in bold, Mingyuan Capital. The investment arm of Zhou Mingyuan's family. I froze at that page. Sunlight flooded the room, illuminating every word on the page. My finger rested on Mingyuan Capital. The letters slightly raised like a scar pressed into paper. I'll read it, I said. Chen Qiming looked at me, the corner of his mouth curving up just slightly. Good. Go check out the company on Monday. The address is on the last page. I tucked the file into my bag and stood to leave. At the door, Chen Qiming called out. Lu Huayan. I turned. If your father could see the look in your eyes today, he said. That he'd be proud that I didn't know what to say to that. I just nodded that as the elevator descended. The crystal chandelier of the 58th floor shrank to a pinprick of light above me. I looked at my own reflection in the mirrored steel walls. It was the same face as the one that had stood in front of the ATM yesterday. And yet, not the same at all. The fog in my eyes had lifted. They caught the light spilling through the elevator seam, clear and bright. That night, I went home and read Microintelligence's business plan until 3 a.m. It was rough around the edges, that amateurish layout, mismatched fonts in places, but the technical sections were brilliant. Deep. The founder, Shen Ziyuan, was a Tsinghua undergrad, Stanford PhD. He'd come back to China and built a small team. Spent 3 years developing a core algorithm from the ground up. That algorithm followed a technical path that dovetailed almost perfectly with what I'd been working on for 6 years. But his went 2 layers deeper, too bolder. My old company. Every project I touched got choked by the same refrains. Use proven solutions. Now don't take risks. Clients want stability, not innovation. 3 years. Hundreds of thousands of lines of code. Less than 30% ever made it to production. But the tech in Shen Ziyuan's BP, those were the ideas I'd been turning over in my head at 2 a.m., staring at my screen. The ones I'd never had a chance to build. I reached out to Shen Ziyuan the next day. He was younger than I expected. 26. Black-rimmed glasses. A worn-out hoodie. When we met at a Starbucks, he was so nervous he kept rubbing the rim of his cup while pitching to potential investors. When I told him I was interested in investing, his eyes went wide. Which firm are you with? I'm private. I slid my materials across the table. The money comes through Huiding Capital. I'd handle the operations, and I can contribute technically. He flipped through my notes, then stopped abruptly. He pointed at a rough technical diagram I'd scribbled on one page. And when he looked up, his expression had changed entirely. He tapped the paper. Your approach to the underlying scheduling logic. It's exactly what I was thinking. You're in this space 2.6 years. We talked for 4 hours straight in that Starbucks. Distributed scheduling, edge computing, operator fusion, bottlenecks in heterogeneous architectures. The more we talked, the brighter his eyes got. Eventually, he tossed the business plan aside, grabbed a napkin, and started sketching architecture diagrams. I grabbed one too. We sat hunched over that tiny cafe table like 2 high schoolers cramming for an exam. Heads down, pens flying for half an hour. Brother Lou. He finished his last sketch and looked up. Where were you working before? How did no one fund you? Let's not get into the past. I folded my napkin and tucked it into my pocket. I'll have the lawyers draft the agreement next week. You get the paperwork ready for the business registration changes. We'll work out the equity split in detail. But I promise you that I won't interfere with your RD direction. Shen Ziyuan looked at me with an expression that shifted from this investor doesn't look rich to this man actually understands what I'm building. He reached out his hand. His palm was warm, slightly sweaty. Brother Lou, looking forward to working with you. Same here. I didn't go back to my rental after Starbucks. I took a cab straight to Huiding Tower. Chen Qiming wasn't in, but his secretary handed me a key and an address. Mr. Chen said this office is yours to use, and the space beyond it is open to you. Access code is your birthday. I went to the office. It was an entire floor. Over 8,000 square feet of open, sun-drenched space, floor-to-ceiling windows with a river view. I stood in that empty expanse, feeling like a beggar who'd wandered into a palace, but I sat down. I opened Shen Ziyuan's business plan and started logging every question I had, building a formal pre-investment analysis and due diligence checklist. The sound of my keyboard echoed through the empty floor, rhythmic and steady, like footsteps moving forward. One at a time, for the next 2 weeks, I practically lived in that meeting room on Huiding's top floor. Shen Ziyuan and I held over a dozen sessions, completely reworking the business plan, technical roadmap, market strategy, financial projections, from scratch. 3 times over. Chen Qiming would drift up occasionally, never saying much, just sitting in the corner with his tea, watching me argue with Shen Ziyuan over some technical parameter at the whiteboard. By week 3, Microintelligence closed its first round. Huiding Capital led the investment. I followed as a private investor. Shen Ziyuan's team contributed core technology in exchange for equity. After the business registration changes, I held the largest stake. Shen Ziyuan was the second largest shareholder and CEO. I took the title of technical advisor. Shen Ziyuan said I should be CTO. I told him that you're driving the RD. I'm here to push from behind. The day we signed all the papers. Chen Shiming opened a bottle of whiskey. A rare occurrence. He poured me a glass, poured himself one, and we touched the rims. Your father was the same way, he said. When he signed his first investment agreement, he was like a kid, ran back to me shouting, "Brother, we're going to make it." I held that glass without drinking, staring at the sunset flowing across the river outside the window. 20 years ago, Chen Shiliang sat across a table and signed Huiding Capital's starting line. 20 years later, his son sat in the same building and signed his own company's first investment that he would never know. But I knew, and Chen Shiming knew. Uncle Chen, I said, can you tell me more about my father? Chen Shiming was silent for a moment, swirling his glass. Then he began to talk. He talked about Chen Shiliang climbing trees as a kid, falling out and scraping his knee, but insisting it didn't hurt. He talked about the two brothers starting from nothing, building their business from a single 10-square-meter office to industry leaders. He talked about how Chen Shiliang would always bring back a couple bags of local snacks for the office after every business trip. He told me all these small, inconsequential things, and together, those fragments gave shape to a man I'd never met. He wore white shirts. He always finished every grain of rice in his bowl. He flushed easily when he drank, but drank anyway. His left eyebrow went higher than his right when he laughed. I listened, and somewhere in the middle of it, my nose started to sting. I turned my head toward the window, pretending to admire the river view, and wiped the corner of my eye with my sleeve. Chen Shiming didn't look at me. He kept talking, his voice steady, as if afraid that if he stopped he wouldn't be able to start again. I got back to my rental late that night. A streetlight was out near the entrance. The gate screeched when I pushed it open. Just as I was about to head upstairs, something caught my eye. A white sedan parked at the curb. Its headlights flashed once. I ignored it and kept walking. Lu Huan. A woman's voice came from behind me. I stopped mid-step. That voice I knew it too well. Even in a crowded market, I could pick it out within 3 seconds. I turned around. Lin Wanqing was standing by the white sedan. She wore a light gray knit cardigan, her hair down, no makeup. The dim streetlight hit her face, and she looked like a completely different person from the cafe that day. That day she'd been polished, cold, superior. Today she looked anxious, tense, and for the first time, uncertain. A look I had never once seen on her face. How did you find me? I asked. Your HR gave me the address. She took 2 steps closer, then stopped, as if trying to gauge how close was safe. Lu Huan, I heard you started a company. You're well informed. Ming Yuan's people told him. She bit her lower lip. Her eyes flickered under the street lamp. Where did you get the money? How do you have money? When we divorced, you clearly had. Clearly had what? She stopped short, realizing the trap. That's not what I meant. I mean, you left so easily. I thought you'd been hiding savings. I looked at her. Wind blew through the alley, lifting the hem of her cardigan and letting it fall. She stood in this rundown lane, utterly out of place, like a flower that had sprouted through a crack in the concrete. Lin Wanqing, I said, you came all the way here just to ask that. Her lips parted, then closed. Her fingers worked the strap of her bag, rubbing the leather over and over. The nude pink shimmer on her nails caught the dim light. I checked the card. She finally said, quieter. The money. Was it wrong? I just looked at her. I transferred 300,000. She said, her voice dropping further. Lin Wanqing. I kept my voice flat. There was 3,000. You didn't transfer it wrong. It was 3,000. Her face went white under the streetlight. Her lips moved, forming words she couldn't bring herself to say. She knew that any excuse she offered would be met with one question. Did you check the transfer yourself? Did you confirm the amount? When you said 300,000, were you going off arithmetic? Or your conscience? She stood there, like a plant that had been severed from its roots, and was just now realizing it used to have some. I'll pay you back. She finally whispered, almost inaudibly. The full amount. 300,000. Send me your account. I leaned against the rusty door frame of the unit entrance and watched her. She stood 2 yards away. Elegant, nervous, tiptoeing like a cat in unfamiliar territory, unsure whether to retract its claws. No need, I said. Her head snapped up, eyes wide. I'll keep the 3,000. I said, when things are better for me, I'll pay you back. With interest. I smiled. She stood frozen. I turned and pushed open the gate, heading up the stairs. As the door swung shut behind me, her voice squeezed through the crack. Lu Huan, you've changed. The hallway light flickered on, then died. I stopped 2 steps up, not turning around. People change, I said quietly. You changed without telling me. So I changed without telling you. I went upstairs, closed the door behind me. Outside, the white sedan sat idling for a long time before pulling away. I watched from the window as its taillights disappeared around the corner. Then I drew the curtain, sat at my small desk, and opened my laptop that I kept working on Microintelligence's next financing plan. The screen's cold light washed over my face, but my eyes were warm that I thought about the expression on Lin Wanqing's face just now. Standing in that broken alley in a cardigan that cost more than every piece of furniture in my apartment combined. Asking me, how do you have money? She'd never understand how a man who'd been ground into the dirt could stand back up, because she didn't know there was a seed buried under that dirt. A seed she'd never seen. One that had been waiting for a spring she'd never had the patience to stick around for. Now it was sprouting that I looked down at the copy of Chun Chiliang's photo on my desk. White shirt, old office, smiling with his left eyebrow slightly higher than his right. Dad, I whispered, I'm starting outside. The city lights stretched wide, like a warm river that would never go dark. 3 months later, I stood in front of my apartment mirror for a long time that I almost didn't recognize the man looking back at me. The custom charcoal suit was Italian wool, measured 3 times before it was cut. The shirt had mother-of-pearl buttons, my initials embroidered on the inside of each cuff. My hair was shorter, temples cleanly trimmed. I shaved every day now. My jawline was sharper than it had been 3 months ago, but it was my eyes that were different. Those eyes had been clouded with a gray fog that day at the ATM. The fog was gone now. What lay beneath was bright, that almost jarring. Brother Liu, you ready? Shen Ziyuan's voice came from the living room. The car's here. That I tugged at my collar, grabbed my black briefcase, and walked out. Today was my first industry conference as Microintelligence's technical advisor. The venue was the convention center in the west end of the city. Half the tech investment community was here. Founders, VCs, analysts. Shen Ziyuan would present the technical side. I'd handle investor and client conversations about implementation. 3 months of working together, and we'd build a rhythm. 1 on stage. One off. Coordinated like a single mind, splitting its thoughts across 2 people. Inside the hall, Shen Ziyuan went off to test his slides. I grabbed a coffee and stood by a pillar near the exhibit area, watching the crowd flow past. Bespoke suits, limited edition watches, PR women sprinting in heels. The air was thick with 3 competing perfumes. And then I saw her. Lin Wanqing walked in through the side entrance on Zhou Mingyuan's arm. She wore a black velvet dress, her hair in an elaborate updo, diamond teardrop earrings swaying with each step. Zhou Mingyuan was in a burgundy suit, hair slicked back, posture the same as 3 months ago. Chin up, jaw set, like a small predator surveying its territory. They were chatting with a group of investors. Zhou Mingyuan's voice carried across the room. Our project goes live next month. We're already in our 2nd round. We've been building moats in this sector for 3 years. No latecomer can catch up. Lin Wanqing smiled beside him, champagne flute in hand, poised and elegant. The perfect partner. Her gaze drifted across the hall, scanning. It passed over my area. And stopped for half a second. She saw me, but then she looked away, because she didn't recognize me. I leaned against the pillar, coffee in hand, a faint smile at the corner of my mouth. 3 months ago, in this same city, facing this same face, her look had said, not good enough. Now she'd glanced at me and seen nothing but a stranger. A stranger wearing a suit worth 3 times her husband's. I didn't approach her. I didn't even make a point of being seen. I just stood there, drank my coffee, and waited for my turn. About half an hour later, Shen Ziyuan took the stage. He stood in the spotlight as the main screen flashed Microintelligence's logo, followed by the technical architecture diagrams. His pace was measured, every sentence backed with enough substance to command attention. The room had been restless at first. By the 3rd slide, phones were being put down. Bodies leaned forward. I sat in the 3rd row, hands folded on my knees. Expression calmed. On the 5th slide, I saw Zhou Mingyuan's face change. He leaned sideways to murmur something to his associate, then pulled out his phone and scrolled through it. When he looked back at the screen, his eyes had shifted from casual interest to active alarm, because the technical path on that screen had just bypassed every core patent his company had spent the past 3 years applying for. In simpler terms, once Microintelligence's product launched, Zhou Mingyuan's entire technology stack would be market irrelevant. His so-called moats were just short walls you could step over. Who funded this? Zhou Mingyuan's voice was low, directed at his assistant. The assistant scrolled through his phone, leaned in, and said something. Zhou Mingyuan's eyes swept the room. Searching. They didn't find their target. Because his assistant's search would have shown Microintelligence's majority shareholder as a name he'd never heard of. He'd never guessed that man was sitting 3 rows back at an angle, wearing a more expensive suit than his, drinking a cheaper coffee, watching with an expression that could have been carved from stone. When Shun Ziyuan finished, the applause was strong. Several investors were already murmuring in huddled discussions. I stood and headed toward the backstage area. As I passed Zhou Mingyuan's row, I didn't slow down. I didn't glance sideways, but I could feel his gaze on my back. The cease and desist letter from his lawyers had arrived 2 days ago, alleging theft of core trade secrets. It was grandly worded, sent by a firm I recognized, Lin Wanqing's cousin's practice. They specialized in IP litigation. Small world. Aggressive approach. When that letter came, Shun Ziyuan's face went scarlet with rage. I patted his shoulder and said, "Let them jump first, that I'd already done my homework." 3 years ago, Zhou Mingyuan's company had built its first product by copying open-source code from a small firm and rebranding it as their own. That small firm hadn't had the money to fight back then. They'd folded, but they'd kept the receipts. And those receipts were now sitting in an encrypted folder on my computer at Huiding Tower that if they wanted to fight, they'd get one. After the presentation, there was a banquet on the 3rd floor of the convention center. I changed into a fresh shirt, spent half an hour talking with a few potential investors, then stepped out onto the terrace with a glass of water to get some air. The night breeze carried the cool edge of autumn and the faint sweetness of osmanthus from somewhere nearby. Behind me, the glass door slid open. Heels clicked on marble. Measured. Steady. Then a voice I'd heard for over 6 years, carrying a note of uncertainty. Lu. Why not? I turned. Lin Wanqing stood by the glass door, one hand still on the handle. Her expression was a still frame of shock. Confusion. Recognition. Then something that looked like a dam breaking inside her. How? You. She stepped forward, then stopped. Her knuckles were white where she gripped her bag. How are you here? You're wearing that. You're here for the conference, I said. She stared for a long moment. Then something clicked. Her voice rose. Microintelligence. You're behind it. That project is yours. I invested in it. Where did you get the money? She was almost shouting now. Lu Huayan. You had nothing when we divorced, Lin Wanqing. I said her name quietly. She stopped. She looked at me, lips trembling, eyes glistening with the beginnings of red. The card you gave me. I said that it had $3,000, not 300,000. She went still. The terrace was silent for a few heartbeats, save for the distant murmur of traffic from the streets below. She opened her mouth, but whatever she was about to say died in her throat. I'm not here to settle accounts with you, I said. I set my water glass on the railing. I just came to say one thing. You told me, good men don't live good lives. I spent 3 months thinking about it. You were wrong. She stared at me, something fragile trembling behind her eyes. A good life isn't reserved for good people or bad people. I said that it's for people who keep going. Whether you're good has nothing to do with it. What matters is whether you keep walking. I gave her a small nod. Take care of yourself. I turned and walked toward the glass door. As I passed her, her voice came from behind me. Faster now. Desperate. Lu Huayan. That money. Who gave it to you? I paused, glanced sideways, and said, someone who's been dead for 20 years. I pushed the door open and stepped back into the banquet hall. Behind me, on the terrace, Lin Wanqing stood alone in the autumn breeze, her black velvet hem stirring gently in the night. She didn't follow. I wove through the crowd. Zhou Mingyuan was nearby, deep in conversation. His gaze swept across me and stopped. He'd seen Lin Wanqing leave in that direction and seen me come back. The expression on his face was a marvel. Confusion, wariness, and just a flicker of indignation. I raised my water glass toward him in a small toast and kept walking. Shun Ziyuan appeared at my elbow. Brother Lu, that woman was staring at you the whole time. You know her, used to. Oh. He didn't press. Also. That Zhou Mingyuan guy, the VP, his assistant came by asking about our investment background. What should I tell him? Let them dig, I said, taking a sip. The more they find, the less they'll sleep. Shun Ziyuan looked at me, adjusted his glasses, and grinned. Brother Lu, you're different from 3 months ago. Different how? I don't know. He scratched his head. When we talk tech, there used to be this thing in your voice, like you always figured you'd get shut down anyway. It's gone now. I patted his shoulder. That's because I used to get shut down. Not anymore. The banquet wound down. I stepped outside to wait for my ride. The autumn wind had teeth. I buttoned my jacket and scanned the curb. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Lin Wanqing, and Zhou Mingyuan emerged through the revolving doors, flanked by a small group. Zhou Mingyuan was on his phone, voice tight, giving orders. Lin Wanqing walked beside him, face pale, her gaze drifting toward me more than once. My car arrived. I pulled open the door and slid in. I didn't look back. In the side mirror. The hotel's lights grew smaller, then rounded a corner and vanished entirely. I leaned back in my seat and closed my eyes. 3 months ago, I'd stood in the rain with a bank card worth $3,000 in my pocket. Now I sat in the back of a sedan with a business card in my suit pocket, still getting used to the title printed on it. Where to? Mr. Liu, the driver asked. Back to the office. I have some work tonight. The car pulled into the night. The city's lights streamed past on either side like twin rivers of light. I opened my eyes and watched them, thinking about the last line of Chun Chiliang's letter. Just know that there's always been someone in this world who wanted you to have a good life. I'd memorized his face now. Smiling, left eyebrow slightly higher than the right. White shirt, always finished every grain of rice. Dad, I said silently. I'm doing okay now. Outside, the whole city was lit up. After the tech summit, Shen Ziyuan's inbox exploded. Investment inquiries, partnership requests, media queries. His expression cycled from finally. People see us. To I can't possibly respond to all this. In the span of one night. The next morning, when I walked into the office, Shen Ziyuan was hunched over his desk, surrounded by stacks of printed emails up to his chin. He peered over them as I came in, looking like a man drowning in paperwork. Brother Liu. Help. Pick the 3 most important. Standard template for the rest. Don't make them feel ignored. Don't promise anything. Dove in, shuffled through the pile, and pulled out 3. The logo on the top one was unmistakable. Cloud Living, the country's largest smart home manufacturer. With nearly 40% market share, they'd been in talks with Zhou Mingyuan's company for over a year and a half, developing a custom product to meet their specifications. Now Cloud Living's VP of Business Development had sent a direct email. After reviewing your proposal, we believe Micro-Intelligence's architecture offers superior compatibility and scalability. Would you be available for a meeting next week? Shen Ziyuan looked at me. Brother Liu, what should I say? Don't reply yet. I read through the email again. Make them wait 3 days. He blinked. Wait, what if they go somewhere else? They won't. I leaned against the edge of the desk. Cloud Living has been in the smart home space for 7 years. Their biggest pain point is interoperability between devices from different brands. Our solution solves that. They've been looking for a year and a half, and Zhou Mingyuan's team couldn't deliver. Now they've found someone who can. They're not going anywhere in 3 days. Shen Ziyuan considered it, then nodded and closed the email. That afternoon, I had my assistant quietly seed a rumor through another channel. Micro-Intelligence was actively contesting an IP lawsuit filed by a competitor. The lawsuit itself was real. Zhou Mingyuan's lawyers had sent the letter, and our legal team was indeed responding. But that actively contesting was a carefully chosen phrasing. It made the other side look desperate. Word spread faster than I'd expected. 2 days later, Cloud Living's email arrived again. This time, even warmer. When would be convenient for Mr. Liu? We'd like to send our lead to visit in person, Thursday afternoon. I replied that in those 3 days. I also did something else. Shen Qiming connected me with a man named Sunday, the founder of that small company. Zhou Mingyuan had copied code from 3 years ago. Sun was 35 now, running a modest studio in a second-tier city. He was getting by, but he'd never recaptured the spark of his early days. I called him and got straight to the point. Is the evidence still there? Are you willing to use it? If we win, what do you want? Sun was quiet for a long time. Then he said that I couldn't afford to fight back then. I had to swallow it. But if I get a chance now to take back what was stolen, even if it's just making them admit it that I'm in, then I'll handle the rest. I hung up. Organized the materials Sun sent over. Source code comparisons, email chains, project timelines. And encrypted them in 3 separate cloud backups. IT was an old key, but now we'd found the right lock. Thursday afternoon, Cloud Living's VP of Business Development, Zhou Yutong, arrived. She was in her mid-30s, sharp short hair, fast-talking but clear-headed. A real expert. She and Shen Ziyuan dove into 3 hours of technical deep dive. I chimed in a few times on implementation and cost control. Afterward, Zhou Yutong leaned back in her chair and exhaled. Mr. Liu, Dr. Shen, we've been evaluating this internally for 18 months. We couldn't find a team that could deliver. Frankly, it's impressive that Micro-Intelligence got this level of product built at this stage. Shin's team has strong fundamentals. I said. Zhou Yutong smiled. Then she shifted that I should be upfront. Though, our previous partner was Xian Core Technology, backed by Mingyuan Capital. After Xian Core found out I was here, they sent a formal letter urging us to reconsider, citing disputes over technical origins. Shen Zuan's expression darkened. Mine didn't change. I took a sip of tea.ms. Zhou, I said, was that letter sent before or after we received their legal notice? She met my eyes over the rim of her cup, then smiled. After. Then Xian Core's moat has been bypassed. The lawsuit is just a delay tactic that TO slow us down while they scramble to catch up. Zhou Yutong set down her cup and nodded. You see it clearly. My stance with the executive team is that as long as microintelligence can produce solid evidence of independent development, the partnership won't be affected that we have that evidence. I said, available for review anytime that we shook hands at the door. Looking forward to working together. After she left, Shen Ziyuan slumped into his chair and let out a long breath. Brother Liu, that scared me. What scared you? When she mentioned Xian Core's letter. You didn't even flinch. Why would I flinch? I swiveled my chair toward the computer. The more desperate Xian Core looks, the more mistakes they'll make. The more mistakes they make, the more openings we have. You expected them to sue that I didn't expect it. I opened the encrypted folder and brought up Sun's files. But I always leave myself a back door. Shen Ziyuan leaned in. When he saw what was on the screen, his mouth slowly fell open. Brother Liu, where did you get this? Someone got screwed 3 years ago. They couldn't afford a lawyer then. Now someone's paying the tab. Shen Ziyuan stared at me for a long beat. Brother Liu, sometimes you're kind of scary. Take out the kind of. I closed the folder. Tomorrow, the legal team has a call with Xian Core's counsel. You're coming. For what? TO talk settlement. Shen Ziyuan blinked. Settlement. We're settling with them. Why did I lean back in my chair and watched him? Teaching this kid was a full-time job, because offering a settlement puts us in a position of strength. I said that it says we're not afraid to go to court, but we're giving them an off-ramp. If they don't take it, public opinion swings to us. If they do, we set the terms that I'd already had legal draft those terms. Buried inside was a mutual release of past claims that a clause that would prevent Xian Core from ever suing over that old case. If they signed, they'd be waiving their right to fight that battle ever again. Shen Ziyuan processed it. Then he said, we're digging them a pit, but putting a cushion at the bottom. If they jump in, they're fine. If they don't, the walls collapse on them. Something like that. I stood and patted his shoulder. You learn fast. He pushed his glasses up. Expression complicated. Brother Liu, what exactly happened to you in those 3 months that I thought about it? Someone emptied out my pockets. I said. Then I realized I never had pockets in the first place. The signing day. We met at the Rue Ting Hotel Suite. Cloud Living and Microintelligence finalizing the contract. Zhou Yutong signed for the buyer. Shen Ziyuan signed for us. I watched from the side. No pen in hand. This was Shen's deal. His name belonged on the line. Afterward, we took the group photo. Zhou Yutong said she'd handle the internal process and the first payment would arrive by next week. I walked her to the elevator. From the corner of my eye, I noticed someone in the lounge area at the far end of the hallway. Burgundy suit. By the window, a cup of coffee sat untouched in front of him. Zhou Mingyuan. He had a document spread out on the table, as if he was waiting for someone. But whoever he was waiting for wasn't on this floor. His gaze was fixed on the doorway of the signing suite. Across the entire length of the corridor. And landed directly on me. I gave him a small nod. Then turned and walked back. As I passed the lounge area, I caught the edge of his hand in my peripheral vision. It was clenched into a fist. Knuckles white. Mr. Zhou, I said without slowing down. Sorry for the steal. Behind me, a coffee cup hit its saucer with a dull clink. I didn't look back. I pushed the door open and walked into the suite. 3 days later, Microintelligence received a settlement proposal from Xian Core. They dropped the lawsuit in exchange for Microintelligence's agreement not to publicize the matter. Translation. We both walk away. No one says a word about what happened. Our lawyer brought it to me. I flipped to the second to last page, where the mutual release of past claims clause had been circled in red, with a handwritten note added. This clause applies to all existing and historical disputes between the parties that including, but not limited to intellectual property, labor, and commercial matters. They deepen the pit themselves. I signed on the last page. Send it back. No changes. After the lawyer left, I called Sunday. He answered. Voice rough. Signed. I said. Your old case is now wrapped up in their existing and historical disputes. Xi and Core signed it. That means they've acknowledged they can't go back on it. Sun was quiet on the other end for a long time. Then came a sound like a choked sob held in for years. Brother Lou. He said, "Thank you. Don't thank me." I leaned against the windowsill, watching the gray winter sky. You didn't do anything wrong. You just ran out of time back then. Now you have it. After I hung up, I stood by the window for a while, scrolling through my call history. I found Lin Wanqing's name buried deep beneath months of other contacts. Her name used to dominate the list, calls asking if she was coming home for dinner, what she wanted for her birthday, how her project was going. She'd answer in one word, "No. Fine. Busy." Now her name had drifted to the bottom. The new entries were all Shen Ziyuan. Legal. Zhou Yutong. Uncle Chun. I hadn't deleted her on purpose. She'd just been pushed down naturally, like tide washing away words written in sand. Not scrubbed clean, just covered. Because the water came, and the words disappeared. That night, I went back to the rental. The old one. I'd moved to a newer apartment. 2 bedrooms, facing the river. But I'd kept the keys to that rundown place. Sometimes I'd go sit on that hard bed and stare at the walls for a while. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled the manila envelope from the nightstand drawer. Chen Qiliang's letter. The DNA test. The business card. Still there. I read through it again, folded the letter back up, and put it away. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. A woman's voice. Hoarse, like she'd been crying but holding it in. Lu Huan. Lin Wanqing. I didn't hang up. I didn't speak. Her breathing came in ragged spurts. Then, Zhou Mingyuan came home furious tonight. He blamed me. Said if I hadn't divorced you, you wouldn't have stolen his clients. I leaned against the headboard, watching the river lights through the window. He'd been drinking. Through things. Her voice faded. Lu Huan. I thought she stopped. I didn't know what she was trying to say. Regret. Self-pity. An invitation to comfort her. I wasn't interested. Lin Wanqing. I said. She went quiet. You were right. I said. Good men don't live good lives. I watched the lights flicker on the watered S.O. I changed. A small, strangled sound came through the line, like something being caught in her throat. I hung up. The screen went dark. The room fell quiet. A distant ship horn echoed across the river. Low. Long I stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the water glittering with the city's fractured light. I pulled the unknown number into my blocked list. Then I turned off the lamp and lay back down. The ceiling was smooth. No cracks. I closed my eyes. The product launch was scheduled for early December. Shen Ziyuan had been pulling all-nighters on the presentation deck for 3 days straight until the assistant and I physically dragged him onto the office couch for a nap. The final version he delivered was solid. Technical section as tight as a brick. Market data clean. Timeline reasonable. The only change I made was to the last slide, which had my BIO.MR. Lu Huan. Affiliated with Huiding Capital. Experienced technology investor. I deleted it and wrote Lu Huan. Technical partner. Microintelligence. Former tech lead at a technology company. 6 years of experience in core architecture development. Shen Ziyuan woke up, saw the change, and frowned. Brother Lou, that's way too low-key. Low-key is fine. I closed the file. The person on stage is you. The product is your team's. I'm just handing you tools from the wings. He looked at me, adjusted his glasses, didn't argue, but I saw the corner of his mouth twitch. Launch day. Hall 1 at the convention center was packed. 1,200 seats filled, plus standing room. Tech press, industry analysts, investors, potential clients. And plenty of rivals who'd come to see what the new kid on the block was all about. Shen Ziyuan arrived at the backstage area 30 minutes early. He paced in front of the mirror, mouthing his opening lines. I leaned against the table and watched him point 3 months ago. In that Starbucks, he'd been nervous enough to rub circles into his paper cup. Now he was doing anxious little shuffles. But he was different. The nervous energy was still there. But beneath it was something else. A bird that had just been released from its cage and was still learning where the higher currents were. Shen Ziyuan. I called. He stopped. Turned out. Don't recite the script up there. I said. You know 10 times more than what's written. Just say what you know. He blinked. Then he took the folded printout from his pocket, set it aside, took a deep breath, and pushed through the door. I watched from the wings as he stepped from darkness into the spotlight. He was better than any rehearsal. By the 3rd slide, he paused, looked at his own hands, then lifted his head and said something not in the script. Everyone. I started thinking about this in my 2nd year of grad school. I thought about it for 6 years. I scrapped it 3 times. I had over a dozen failed versions. Last June, when the last one finally ran, I sat in front of my computer for half an hour, staring at the screen. Then I called my mom and said, "Mom, I think I did it." She said, "Your face is so red. Are you running a fever again?" Laughter rippled through the audience. He went on. "Then I met someone." He glanced toward the wings. "That he read my business plan. He didn't ask me, 'What's your valuation? How big is your team? When's your IPO?' He asked me, 'How many layers in your load balancing algorithm?' And I thought, if this guy gets it. I stood in the dark of the wings. My hands clenched and unclenched at my sides that he finished the technical demo. The prototype's benchmark scores flashed on the screen. Microintelligence outperforming Xion Core on every metric. A few people in the front row from Xion Core stood up, then sat back down. Their faces were ashen. Then came the QA. Shun Ziyuan fielded the journalist's questions smoothly. The last question came from a tech reporter who seemed to have prepped it. Dr. Shun, microintelligence is less than a year old, yet your core technology bears significant similarity to Xion Core's path. There's skepticism about your technical origins. How do you respond? I spotted Zhou Mingyuan in the third row. Lin Wanqing sat beside him in a cream-colored cashmere coat. Makeup lighter than before. Dark circles poorly concealed beneath foundation. Zhou Mingyuan's hands rested on his knees. His chin lifted in that posture of waiting to be proven right. Shun Ziyuan looked at the reporter. He didn't flinch. He smiled just slightly. He glanced toward the wings. I nodded. He turned back to the microphone. The paths look similar because we're solving the same problem. But ask me about the underlying logic, and I'll show you 7 fundamental differences between our architecture and Xion Cores. If you're interested, stay after the talk. I'll walk you through each one. Applause. The reporter tried to follow up. Shun Ziyuan raised a hand. Before that, I want to take a minute to introduce someone important to me. He gestured toward the wings. I froze. The spotlight swiveled, found me in the dark, and pinned me in place. I stood there for a moment, then stepped out into the light. I in the third row. A figure stood up so fast she banged her knee against the seat. Lin Wanqing. She stared at the stage, face draining of color. Zhou Mingyuan reached for her arm, but she was rigid. A wire pulled taut to breaking. Shun Ziyuan gestured to me. This is Mr. Lu Huayan, technical partner at Microintelligence, and the person who made the first investment decision that brought this company to life. He did one thing, the simplest and hardest thing a founder can ask for. He understood me, and he believed in me. I stood on the stage, the lights illuminating every face in the audience, familiar and unfamiliar, smiling and watching. And in the third row, a face drained of color. Lin Wanqing was still standing, blocking the view of the people behind her. They muttered in annoyance. Beside her, Zhou Mingyuan's face shifted from iron gray to dark red as he stared at me. Recognition spreading like slow poison across his features. He'd finally remembered the man in the hotel hallway. The one he'd dismissed 3 months ago as that guy with no background. The one who now stood in front of 1,000 people as Microintelligence's technical partner that he remembered. Too late. Shun Ziyuan returned to the QA. I stepped back to his flank, hands resting on the edge of the podium. I caught Lin Wanqing's face for a moment, her lips moving. Soundless. I could read the shape Lu Huayan. I didn't respond. I looked away. After the launch, journalists swarmed Shun Ziyuan. I answered a few questions from the periphery, then excused myself toward the green room. The corridor corner. A hand grabbed my sleeve. Lu Huayan. I looked down. Nude pink shimmer on the nails. Same shade as 3 months ago. I looked up. Lin Wanqing stood before me. Collar of her cashmere coat askew. A strand of hair loose against her cheek. Her eyes were red, but dried out like something was stuck in her chest that wouldn't come out. When? Her voice cracked. When did you become like this? Like what? Rich. Powerful. On top. You were never like this before. You were. What was I? She opened her mouth. The words caught in her throat. She thought I was simple. Mediocre. Someone who'd stay exactly where I was. She couldn't say it now, because the man in front of her had taken never going anywhere, and turned it into this is just the beginning. His money. Right. Her voice pitched up suddenly, grasping for something to cling to. Your father's money. That's inheritance. Lu Huayan. It's not earned. Does it matter? She froze. Your money is what you earned. I said. The 6 years of my salary you spent. Did you check if I earned it? The money you transferred, but did you check if it was mine to give? Now, every cent I spend. Wherever it comes from. Will never pass through your hands again. She took a step back, pressing against the corridor wall. She stood there, fragile in her cream coat. that I didn't come here to fight. Her voice dropped, the shell cracking to reveal something soft underneath. Zhou Mingyuan's been different since you took that deal. He drinks. He throws things. Last night, he hit me. She looked up at me. All the pride and sharpness were gone, replaced by something worn down. The color of old fabric after too many washes. Fatigue. So you came to me. I looked at her. What do you want me to do? Save you? She didn't answer, but her hand still gripped my sleeve. Lin Wanqing. I gently peeled her fingers off. You said you chose Zhou Mingyuan because he could give you the life you wanted. So go get it. Her lips trembled. On my side. I said, that road is closed. You closed it yourself. You finished it. I turned and walked away. Footsteps on marble. Clean and final. Behind me. No sound of pursuit. I stepped out the convention center doors. The winter wind hit my face. Cold, but clear. At the bottom of the steps, a car was waiting. The window rolled down, and Chen Shiming waved from the back seat. Get in, he said. I slid in. The car was warm. Chen Shiming handed me a cup of tea. You on that stage just now. If your father could have seen it. Uncle Chen, I said, taking the cup. That you've said that 3 times today. He blinked, then laughed. Old age. Memories going. I held the tea, leaning into the leather seat. Through the window, the convention center glowed. People streaming out in clusters. Faces animated with post-presentation excitement. I saw Zhou Mingyuan in the crowd, walking alone, phone pressed to his ear. Expression dark. He didn't see me. He kicked a trash can on the curb. Uncle Chen, I said, turning. Do you think I'm here to get revenged? He looked at me. A long, steady gaze. When he spoke, his voice had that warm patina that only time can polish. Whether you're here for revenge, he said, that you'd know better than me. But I noticed something when you were up there. Your eyes don't carry hate. People with hate talk with their mouths turned down. Yours weren't. I looked at my tea. The steam swirled, catching the tiny lights overhead. Good, Chen Shiming said, patting my shoulder. Hate is heavy. Your father never hated anyone. That's why he lived short. But lived true. The car pulled away. The city lights blurred past like a warm artery carrying the heartbeat of countless joys and sorrows. I leaned back and closed my eyes, and oh hate. He was right. I was just walking my own path. It started as a road others had crushed, but I'd picked up the pieces, one by one, and put them back together. And when I was done, I realized the view from this road was better than before, and those who'd crushed it, I owed them a thanks. Without them, I'd never have known this road could be walked at all. My phone buzzed. Shen Ziyuan, Brother Lu. The press is blowing up. We've got 3 of the top 5 trending topics today. Here's the link. I opened it. Comments scrolled past. People praising the tech, calling it textbook-level revenge. One post near the top asked, "So, is the ex-wife sitting at home right now wishing she could slam her head against the wall?" I scrolled past it. No likes, no replies. The last message was from my assistant. Mr. Lu, Exioncore's legal team reached out today. They want to discuss cooperation. Should we set something up? Set it up. I replied. Next week. I put the phone down. The car was crossing the river bridge. Neon reflections lay shattered across the water, like 100 tiny lights lit beneath the surface. I looked out at them, remembering that night 3 months ago, standing in front of the shabby ATM with $3,000 in my pocket and a rusty key in my hand. The key was the same, but the lock had changed, and the door was wide open. The clip of Lin Wanqing losing it at the press conference went viral that night. Tech and finance channels reposted it. Total views crossed 10 figures within hours. I end the video. She stood in her cream cashmere coat, face contorted with emotion. Voice shrill. 3 months ago, he couldn't even afford groceries. He was a nobody. The camera cut to me, standing a few feet away. Expression calm. No anger. No triumph. I just watched her finish, then pulled an old photo from my pocket. A yellowed print. 2 young men, arms around each other's shoulders in front of a newly topped-out building, grinning with one eyebrow higher than the other. The close-up sent the comments section into overdrive. Someone recognized the building in the background, Huiding Capital's old headquarters. Someone dug up the public founder bios and cross-referenced the photo. Then Huiding Capital's official account posted a statement. Mr. Chen Qiuyang, co-founder of Huiding Capital, his only son, Mr. Lu Huayan, has lawfully inherited the relevant assets. The firm fully supports Mr. Lu's independent career in technology. Within an hour of that post, my phone exploded. Every channel blew up. Ex-colleagues, college classmates, industry peers I hadn't spoken to in years. Even my first boss, who'd once chewed me out for spilling instant noodles on a blueprint. Every message said the same thing. Brother Lou, did you see the news? You're Qin Shiliang's son. You kept this from us the whole time. I didn't reply to a single one. I turned all notifications off, flipped the phone face down on the desk, and sat in the sofa with a cup of tea. Outside, the sky was fully dark. The floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the warm yellow light of the room, and my own image in the glass. It wasn't the same silhouette as 3 months ago, sitting on a rental bed reading a letter from a stranger. Not just the outline, the thing underneath had changed. That shadow had been drawn in pale ink then, ready to dissolve in a breeze. Now it was a fine brushstroke, edges crisp, lines solid. The next morning, when I walked into the office, the security guard at the front desk gave a crisp salute. Good morning, Mr. Liu. Last week, he'd called me. Young man. The receptionist stood, gave a small bow, face slightly pink. 2 employees I didn't recognize moved aside in the elevator. One whispered to the other, "That's him." I closed my office door behind me. Shen Ziyuan was already inside, coffee in hand, expression complicated. Brother Liu, you're famous. I know, Uncle Chen called. Asked if you want a PR team. Not right now. Shen Ziyuan set down his coffee, opened his mouth, hesitated. Then, Brother Liu, your father was Qin Shiliang. You never mentioned that. I didn't know until 3 months ago. I sat down and opened my email. I thought my father was a retired steelworker. Shen Ziyuan stared. Then he said, "What about your mother? Did she know about your real father?" My fingers paused over the keyboard. My mother was a concept so distant it might have belonged to someone else's vocabulary. She left when I was 3. My father never brought her up. I asked once, when I was small, where she'd gone. He was quiet for a long time, then said, "Far away." I never asked again. 30 years. I didn't know what she looked like, where she was, if she was alive. I don't know. I changed the subject. Zhou Yutong's tech sync is this afternoon. Prep the materials. Shen Ziyuan took the hint. He headed for the door, then turned back. Brother Liu, for what it's worth, you've got us now. The team, the company. I nodded. Go. After he left, I leaned back and closed my eyes. Sunlight fell across my lids, warm red behind the darkness. A dim shape surfaced in my mind. A woman. My 3-year-old memories had long since faded. But sometimes, in random moments, something would surface. A scent, a warmth, the soft brush of a hand on my hair. Your mother left. That was all I knew. Now, I wanted to know more. 18 noon. I called Chen Qiming. He picked up right away, like he'd been waiting. Uncle Chen, I have something to ask. Go ahead. About my mother. What do you know? A silence on the other end. Then a long, slow sigh. Your mother's name is Gu Xian. She was a receptionist at Huiding when she was young. She and your father were together for a while. Then he ran into trouble. Business rivals were trying to take him down. She was already pregnant with you. He told her to leave. To protect her. She did. And changed her number. He looked for her for years. Eventually, he heard she'd married a man named Liu and settled in the suburbs. Lu Jiangwo. I said yes. Chen Qiming paused. Once he knew you were safe, he stopped looking. He said, "She has a family now. I won't disturb it." Then he died, and the matter was left. He paused again. But I had someone look into it a couple years ago. Your mother's at a care facility in the east part of town now. Her health isn't great. She had knee surgery. Walks with difficulty. I tightened my grip on the phone. Are you going to see her? Chen Qiming asked. I don't know yet. I said, No rush. She's not going anywhere. And I have things to finish first. After I hung up, I stared at the screen for a long time. A project plan was open, cursor blinking at an unfinished line. I watched it flash for maybe 10 minutes. Then I closed the document, opened a browser, and searched for the facility's address and number. I wrote them down on a sticky note. I didn't call. Some things needed to wait until the water settled and you could see what was at the bottom. That afternoon, after the sync meeting, I had several missed calls. All unknown numbers. I didn't return them, but one left a voicemail transcript. Mr. Liu, I'm the head nurse at East Side Rehabilitation Center. A resident named Gu Xian asked me to pass on a message. She said she saw you on TV. She said if you have time, she'd like to invite you for tea. She said she knows you're busy. No rush. I stood at the office window, phone in hand, watching the gray winter sky. The wind pushed clouds across in great swaths, like someone turning pages in a massive book overhead. In a rush. She'd waited 30 years. She could still say. No rush. I sat back down and sent a reply. Is this weekend convenient? I'll come. The reply came fast, very convenient. Mrs. Gu sits in the courtyard every afternoon. Come whenever you're ready. Friday afternoon. I cleared my schedule and had the driver take me east. On the way, I swapped my custom suit for a plain dark sweater and jacket. I thought about changing my shoes, then decided not to. She'd waited 30 years. She shouldn't see her son in a stranger's skin. The facility was on the edge of the old town. Modest but well kept. A few bare-branched plane trees lined the gravel paths, with benches underneath and a carpet of dry leaves. As I walked in, a round-faced woman in her 40s met me at the door. Smiling, Mr. Liu. You're here. Mrs. Gu's in the courtyard, getting some sun. I'll take you. I followed her down a corridor with hand-painted flower murals on the walls, slightly faded but warm. At the end was a glass door opening onto a small courtyard bathed in sunlight. I stopped behind the glass. A woman sat in a wheelchair, dressed in plain cotton, gray hair neatly pinned, a light blanket over her knees. Her back was to me, slightly stooped, her face tilted up toward the bare branches of a plane tree. Her expression was peaceful, like someone content just to sit in the warmth. The nurse said softly, Mrs. Gu, you have a visitor. The woman turned slowly. Sunlight fell across her face. I saw her features. I didn't know her, but I knew those eyes, the same as mine, slightly upturned at the outer corners, pale-hued irises. When she saw me standing in the doorway, her whole body went still. Her hand on the armrest began to shake, veins visible beneath the skin. Then the tears came, silent, tracing the lines of her face and pooling beneath her jaw, one after another, like a valve that had been closed for decades had finally opened. I pushed through the glass door. The winter wind carried a bite, but the sun spread a golden blanket across the courtyard. I walked to her and crouched in front of the wheelchair. I looked up at her face. Her lips trembled. She opened her mouth, and a sound came out, like a rusted hinge finally loosened. Hawaiian point 30 years. I crouched in front of her and reached for her hand. It was dry, skin loose, knuckles prominent, but the palm was warm. You've grown, she said, taller than I imagined, taller than your father. When I saw you on TV, I knew right away. The tears wouldn't stop, but her voice stayed steady. The way you speak, the way you hold your back straight, just like him. What was he like? I asked. She looked at me, eyes swimming. She turned her gaze to the bare branches overhead, then back down. Not a good man, she said quietly. The only mistake he made was letting me go. If he hadn't, she didn't finish. She swallowed the rest of the sentence, as if saying it wouldn't change anything. I crouched there, holding her hand, while she spoke in fragments. How she'd left, how she'd found Lu Jiangwo, why she hadn't come for me. A major surgery, fear of complicating Chun Shiliang's business troubles. Then hearing he'd died. Then hearing I was being raised well. 30 years, boiled down to I didn't want to cause you trouble. I held her hand and said, softly, that it's not trouble. She looked at me. The tears fell faster, warm against my hand. I spent 4 hours in that courtyard. We sat in the sun. I pushed her wheelchair around the plane trees twice. When the cafeteria opened, I got 2 trays and sat across from her by the window. Her food was simple. She insisted on giving me her pork ribs. You're too thin. Between bites, she'd look up at me, as if confirming I was still there. After we finished, the nurse wheeled her back to her room. At the door, she paused and asked, Hawaiian, do you still hate her? I knew who her was. I thought about it. No, I said, that I'm too busy living my life to hate anyone. She looked at me. A smile spread across her face, shallow but warm, like the sun on a quilt that had been airing all morning. Good, she said. Your father didn't hate anyone either. He left early, but he left clean. I nodded. The nurse pushed her through the door. Just before it closed, I saw her still looking at me, her eyes and mine curving at the corners, saying without words, you came. I stood in the hall, looking at the closed door. The overhead light cast a warm yellow glow, and my shadow stretched long on the floor, different from when I'd arrived. Steadier. The roots had finally connected, outside the facility. The sky was dark. I stood at the gate and took a deep breath of the cold air. Then I pulled out my phone. A message from my assistant. Mr. Liu, Mingyuan Capital reached out. They'd like to have dinner with you. I locked the screen and looked up. Winter stars scattered across the dark blue velvet. I exhaled a white cloud and waited for it to disappear. Tomorrow's problems could wait. Tonight, the roots had grown. Nothing else was urgent. The dinner invitation from Mingyuan Capital. I didn't decline. But I didn't rush either. I told my assistant, next Wednesday evening, a time they wouldn't expect. Let them wait. The longer they wait, the lower their posture. The lower their posture, the softer their offers. Uncle Chin taught me that. Whoever blinks first loses. Wednesday. 7 p.m. I arrived at the private restaurant Mingyuan Capital had booked, tucked in an alley in the old quarter. Unassuming facade, exquisite interior, Jiangnan garden style, rock displays, bamboo blinds, an upstairs private room at the end of the hall. When I walked in, Zhou Mingyuan was already seated. No suit tonight, a navy cashmere cardigan, hair more casually styled than before. The arrogance had been dialed down, but the tightness at the corner of his mouth still said, "I'm doing you a favor by being here." Beside him sat a bespectacled man in his 40s. A partner at Mingyuan Capital named Lu. Zhou Mingyuan stood, extended his hand. Mr. Lu, welcome. We shook. Dry palm, firm grip. I sat across, accepted a hot towel from the waiter, and wiped my hands. The meal was pre-ordered. Cold appetizers, then hot dishes presented with elegant plating. Zhou Mingyuan raised his glass for the opening toast, offering the usual pleasantries about past misunderstandings. Harmony in the industry. All professionals working together. I listened. I nodded occasionally. I drank very little for the first half hour. He circled industry trends, policy tailwinds, technical roadmaps, market landscapes. I let him reel the line in slowly. Finally, he set down his chopsticks and leaned back. Mr. Lu, let's be direct. XI core and microintelligence are in the same lane. Collisions are inevitable, but you have Huiding behind you, and we have resources and channels of our own. A head-on battle hurts everyone. Why not talk about dividing the market? Who takes premium? Who takes mid-tier? Cut it up. And everyone eats. I set down my tea. Interesting proposal, Mr. Zhou. But there's a problem. He weighted 0.60% of XI Core's core tech overlaps with architecture I built 6 years ago at a small company. I said, you spent 3 years digging out someone else's foundation and building your walls on it. Now you want to talk division of labor with me. Zhou Mingyuan's expression barely flickered. Lu jumped in.mr. Lu, in this industry, some technologies are just common. Then what about Lingyun technology 3 years ago? I turned to Lu. XI Core's first product was based on Lingyun's open-source project. You adapted over 90% of the code. You paid Lingyun nothing. Their founder wanted to sue, but your legal team dragged it out until they couldn't afford to fight. Should we let the industry judge that? The room went quiet. Lu coughed, glanced at Zhou Mingyuan. Zhou's face had taken on a grayish tint under the warm lights. His hand had slid from the table to his lap, knuckles tightening. Lu Huayan. His voice dropped. What exactly do you want? Nothing. I set the teacup down. I came to eat dinner. That's all. But let me be clear, if XI Core wants to, you're welcome to build application layer products on microintelligence's open platform. But don't touch the underlying architecture again. That's the only cooperation I'm offering. Zhou stared at me for a long, hard moment. I'm being gracious. Mask cracked. Beneath it, the real Zhou Mingyuan appeared, the man who couldn't stand being defied. You inherited money, he said, pushing to his feet. You're just some nouveau riche playing at tech. How many lines of code have you written? How many teams have you led? You're coasting on a dead man's. Mr. Zhou. I stood as well. Slower. Steadier. I looked at him, his face flushed with alcohol and indignation. The company you funded. I said. Used core architecture I developed 6 years ago at a small shop. You poached my former colleagues. You took my technical work. Then you took my wife. The room was silent. The sounds of conversation and clinking dishes from the neighboring room bled through the walls. Now you ask what qualifications I have in this industry. I finished. I have one more qualification than you. I've never stolen anything from anyone. Zhou's hand came up, but didn't strike. It clenched into a fist, knuckles white, then slowly lowered. Lu was already beside him, pulling. Mr. Zhou, let's go. Zhou was half led, half dragged out of the room. The door closed behind him with a soft thud that seemed to shake the whole wall. I stood there. The food was barely touched. The tea had gone cold. The waiter stood in the doorway, uncertain. Don't clear it. I said. I'll take it to go. I left with 6 takeout containers. In the alley, the streetlights cast pools of yellow on the cobblestones. I set the containers on a stone step and lit a cigarette. Just held it, unlit, in my fingers. A habit, needing something to hold. Footsteps approached from the end of the alley. Heels on stone, sharp and approaching. I glanced sideways. Lin Wanqing stood under a street lamp in a black down jacket, hair pulled back in a rough ponytail. No makeup, cheeks flushed from the cold. She looked at me, then at the row of takeout boxes on the step. Her lips twitched, waiting for a ride. She stepped closer, stopped 2 yards away. I didn't answer. She was quiet for a moment. Then, Zhou Mingyuan came home and threw a fit. Threw his keys. Scratched the paint on his car. I said nothing. He's been drinking again. Her voice was low, almost to herself. I tried to help him. He pushed me. She pulled up her sleeve. Just a little. Just enough to show the faint purple bruise on the inside of her wrist. I looked at it. Then I looked away. Lu Huayan. Her voice cracked. Just slightly. Did I make a mistake? The wind blew through the alley, flipping the hood of her jacket back. She stood under the street lamp, shoulders hunched, looking as thin as paper. 3 months ago, she'd sat across from me in a $3,000 coat saying, let's end it clean. Now she stood in a winter alley with bruises on her wrist, asking if she'd made a mistake. Lin Wanqing. I spoke, and the wind carried my voice. When you left, you didn't leave thinking you'd made a mistake. You thought you'd made the right choice. She watched me. Now you regret it. That's your problem. I said that I can't tell you made the right choice. I can't tell you made the wrong one. But when you made that choice, you chose him. What you need to do now isn't ask me if you were wrong. It's walk the path you chose. And walk it clean. Her lips trembled under the streetlight. Her eyes reddened, but no tears fell. She stood there, thinking. Then she bowed her head, took a step back, and said you've changed. People change. I said, you changed without telling me. So I changed without telling you. My car arrived. I bent and picked up the containers from the step, nodded to the driver, and opened the door behind me. Lin Wanqing's voice, barely audible. Lu Huayan. Could I have one hug? Just one. I paused at the door. I didn't turn around. No, I got in the car and closed the door. In the side mirror, she stood under the street lamp, shrinking. Her shadow stretched long. The car rounded the corner, and her figure shrank to a dot before the turn swallowed it. I leaned back in the seat, holding the takeout boxes, breathing in the warm air mixed with leftover food. The driver asked. Mr. Lu, back to the apartment. Office first. I have documents to sign. Crossing the bridge, I looked out at the river, at the city's lights shattered across its surface, flickering, dancing, like someone had lit 1,000 tiny lanterns beneath the water. My phone buzzed. A message from the care facility. Mr. Lu, Mrs. Gu had a good nap. First thing she asked when she woke up. Is he coming? I told her you said this weekend. She was happy all afternoon. I replied. I'll be there. Bring her those osmanthus cakes from the old bakery on West Street. Will do. She'll be so happy. Before locking the screen, I glanced at my contact list. Lin Wanqing's name had been pushed far down, buried beneath. Nurse. Shen Ziyuan. Uncle Chun. Legal. I hadn't deleted her. I hadn't kept her, either. She'd just receded naturally, like a footprint erased by the tide. N01 was to blame. That's just how water moved. The car pulled into the underground garage. I took the takeout containers and rode up. When I pushed through the office door, Shen Ziyuan was still at his desk, coding. He pulled off his headphones and rubbed his eyes when he saw me. Brother Lu, where'd you get that? Private restaurant. Still warm. Want some? He shot up from his chair. Yes. I had 2 packs of crackers for dinner. That night, Shen Ziyuan and I sat on the low table in the office, microwaved half-cold dishes, and ate over white rice. He scrolled through tech blogs between bites, occasionally asking me about an algorithm. Outside, the city glowed, quiet and vast. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, illuminating 2 people, a few boxes of leftovers, and a table covered in schematics and paperwork. I looked at Shen Ziyuan. A grain of rice clung to the rim of his black glasses. He didn't notice. Shen Ziyuan. He looked up. You like where you are now? He blinked, then grinned. Yeah, I get to do what I want, with people who get it. Better than sitting in a lab writing code alone. What if someone knocks you down one day? He thought about it. Get back up and keep walking. What else can you do? You can't just lie there waiting for someone to pick you up. I took a bite of rice, chewed, and smiled. Yeah, get back up. Keep walking. Do what you want. With people who get it. The food was cold, but reheat it, and it was still good. The road was broken, but piece it together, and you could still walk it. The people who broke it, you didn't need to look back and yell at them. You just needed to make the road wider and brighter than before. So bright they'd never reach it again. Microintelligence went public the following spring. The listing ceremony was at the exchange hall. Shen Ziyuan stood at the front. I stood at his left hand, half a step behind. He'd worn a new navy suit. His hair finally slicked back for the occasion, and under the stage lights, he looked like a different person from the hoodie-clad kid nervously rubbing his paper cup at a Starbucks a year ago. But underneath, I knew, he was the same. He froze when they handed him the golden gavel. His palms were sweating. I leaned over and muttered, "Look at the camera." Not at me. He blinked, then laughed. He raised the gavel and struck. The bell rang. Applause thundered. The big screen flashed red as the numbers ticked up and locked in. Microintelligence's opening price was 60% above its offer. Shen Ziyuan got swarmed by reporters. I stepped back to the edge of the crowd, near a pillar, and watched the flashes bloom around him as he angled his head, frowning, trying to answer the rapid-fire questions. He looked exactly like I'd imagined him a year ago. My phone buzzed. Chen Qiming. I saw. Your father would be proud. I looked at the message. Tapped 2 words. Thank you. Then the care facility. Mr. Lu. Mrs. Gu is watching the broadcast. She slapped her knee when you rang the bell and said, "That's my son." The other ladies were all jealous. I smiled. I'll visit next weekend. Bring her favorite lotus seed cakes. Before I could send it, the phone buzzed again. The caller ID made me pause. Lin Wanxing. I stared at the name for 2 seconds. Then hit decline. The phone went quiet. Shen Ziyuan was surrounded by press. Security kept order. Partners exchanged congratulations. The hall breathed that particular spring air. Expanding. Growing. Upward. 1 year ago that same season, I'd stood at an ATM with $3,000. 1 year later, I stood beneath the exchange hall skylight and declined my ex-wife's call. I pocketed the phone and walked toward Shen Ziyuan, ready to extract him from the journalists. Life after the IPO slowed down. The company was bigger. Responsibilities distributed. I didn't have to personally track every technical detail anymore. Shen Ziyuan had built a team of over 30 engineers. I could stand at my office window and watch the boats on the river for a while. One afternoon, I decided to go back. I drove an hour and a half to the care facility, parked in the usual spot, and walked in. Spring had arrived. The plane trees in the courtyard were covered in pale new leaves, almost translucent in the sunlight. My mother sat in her wheelchair, chatting with the woman next to her. Her legs were better now. She could stand and walk short distances, but still needed the chair for anything farther. When she saw me, her eyes lit up. She waved. Huayan, come, sit. I sat beside her on the bench. The spring breeze was soft, carrying the smell of earth and new grass. She reached over and brushed a speck of dust off my sleeve. Then she put her hand back on her knee. Busy lately? Not too bad. The company's public now, so things have calmed down a little. What does public mean? It means we have money now, I said. Then simplified. It means I can buy you a wheelchair with a massage function and a charging port. She tapped my arm. No need. This one's fine. The sun shifted from behind a cloud, brightening the courtyard. Sparrows hopped on the plane branches. My mother sat quietly for a while, then said, softly, Huayan, your ex-wife came by the other day. I turned to look at her. She found this place somehow. I don't know how. My mother's expression was calm. She brought a box of fruit, sat for a while, didn't say much. When she left, she cried. She said to me, Auntie, I'm sorry. I leaned back into the bench and looked up at the new green leaves trembling in the breeze. What did you say? I asked. Nothing. I poured her a glass of water. She drank it and left. You're not angry at her. Why would I be? My mother looked toward the distance. I made choices when I was young too. Some right, some wrong. They're all gone now. She came to me, I think, not for forgiveness, but just to say it to someone. Whether I responded or not, the things she needed to understand. She already understood. I reached over and took her hand. It was warmer than in winter, still loose-skinned, but filling out a little. Mom, I said, but it's spring. She turned to me. Sunlight filled the creases of her face, smoothing them. Her eyes, like mine, caught the green of the tree, the blue of the sky, and the shape of me reflected inside. Yes, she said. Spring. I pushed her chair around the courtyard twice more. By the cafeteria. She said she wanted yogurt. I went in and got 2 cups. We sat side by side on the bench, peeled the lids off, and drank slowly. She got a smear on her lip. I wiped it with my sleeve. She looked at me, then smiled. Your father did that too, she said. Never carried napkins. I inherited it. Inherited well. As dusk came, I walked to my car. The nurse wheeled her to the gate. I took a few steps, turned back. She waved. Her eyes curved in the sunset light. Come next week, she said. I will. Lotus seed cakes. I remember. I got in the car and started the engine. In the rearview mirror, she grew smaller, until she was just a warm blur under the plane trees. I turned the corner, and she disappeared behind them. The road led out of the old town. The sky was a blue deepened by sunset. Clouds layered like pages. The bottom edges burned orange. I drove through the city I'd lived in for 33 years, past old factory districts, past new shopping malls, past the cafe where Lin Wanqing and I had signed the divorce papers a year ago. It was still there. New sign. Everything else the same. Past the alley where I'd stood at that ATM. New streetlights. The gate repainted. I didn't stop. I just passed them. To me now, they were just places. Places meant something had happened there. Not that I was still inside it. My phone rang. Shinziyuan sent a video. The new graduates. All 50-something of them. Posing for a group photo in front of the office building. He stood in front, making a silly peace sign. The caption, Brother Lu. We hit 50 people. I send a thumbs up. Then chin-chiming. Next month is your father's birthday. Let's go visit his grave together. Okay. I set the phone on the passenger seat and kept driving. Spring wind poured through the half-open window, carrying warmth and the scent of some distant flower. A familiar old song played on the radio. I hummed along. Couldn't remember all the lyrics, but the melody came back. The car crossed the river bridge. The city began to light up, lamp by lamp, like someone painting the darkness with dots of gold. I held the wheel and looked ahead at the road. At the silhouette of the city rising on both banks, the road was still long. But now it was mine. I'd chosen it. I'd built it. The materials I used, I'd inherited, earned, given, broken and glued back together, were all mixed in. Underfoot, they felt thick and solid. The river below flowed quiet and dark, mirroring the lights and the passing cars like a long path paved with shattered gold. I pressed the gas. The car moved smoothly toward the far side of the bridge, the spring wind blowing through the window, sweeping away the last sweet scent of lotus seed cakes from my jacket.